Imagine your life savings. All that money you carefully tucked away for years, just poof, gone. Worthless overnight. It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But history shows us this is a real, recurring, and honestly, a pretty predictable pattern. So let's dive into this autopsy of economic collapse and see what actually survives and, well, what goes to zero.
Yeah, this isn't some hypothetical. This is a direct quote from a real person, an eyewitness in Weimar, Germany. I mean, can you imagine you're just standing in line for a loaf of bread and the price literally doubles before you even get to the counter? People weren't carrying wallets anymore. They were pushing wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy a bottle of milk. That's not fiction. That is the reality of hyperinflation.
And look, this isn't just some dusty old story from the 1920s. Not at all. We saw the same thing happen in Zimbabwe in 2008, in Venezuela in 2018, in Lebanon just a couple of years ago. The rules of money, the very thing we depend on, they can just change almost overnight. So understanding this pattern, that's really the first step to making sure you don't get caught in the trap. So how does this actually happen? How does a currency just die? Well, the crazy part is it's not a random accident. It's actually a shockingly predictable process. It follows a pretty strict, almost mathematical pattern every single time. Okay, so check this out. It's a 5-stage process, and it's actually pretty logical when you break it down. Stage 1. It always starts with the government spending way more than it has, racking up huge debts. Stage 2. To pay the bills, they fire up the printing press, just create new money out of thin air. Stage 3. All that new money floods the system and your cash starts buying less and less. That's inflation. Stage 4. People aren't stupid. They see what's happening and they panic. They start dumping their currency for anything tangible, anything real, which leads to Stage 5, the end. The currency becomes worthless. I mean, just look at Lebanon recently. Their currency lost 98% of its value in just 4 years. The pattern, it doesn't change.
All right, so if the ship is sinking, what are the lifeboats? What actually works? Well, the good news is history gives us a really clear list of assets that have survived these collapses time and time again. So, first up, gold. And here's the thing, most people get gold completely wrong. They think of it as an investment, a way to get rich quick. But in a crisis, that is not its job. The real way to think about it is as insurance. It's not to get rich, it's to not get poor. I love this example. An ounce of gold bought a nice man's suit before the German collapse, it bought a suit during the collapse, and it bought a suit after the collapse. The paper money became trash, but the gold held its value.
And this right here, this just nails the point home. This isn't ancient history. This was right after the 2008 financial crisis. While stock markets were in total chaos, silver went up by 400%. 400! Why? It's simple, really. Precious metals are like an anchor. Politicians can't just fire up a printing press and make more gold or silver. The supply is fixed by nature, not by some government committee. Okay, let's switch gears a bit to another hard asset, productive land. Just picture this. During the Great Depression, you had bankers in the big cities, guys with tons of paper wealth, standing in bread lines because their money was worthless. They couldn't eat their stock certificates. But out in the country, the farmer, well, he might have been cash poor, but he had chickens, he had a garden, he had cows. The banker had a zero in his account. The farmer had an omelet for breakfast. The farmer's real wealth was in calories. Okay, that's great, but let's be real. Not everyone can just go out and buy a farm, right? So what else is there? Well, there are other kinds of assets, more portable ones, that don't just survive a collapse. Some can actually thrive. Now, this is where things get really smart. See, not all stocks go to zero. Think about a company that sells its products overseas. They're paying all their local costs, salaries, rent, in the currency that's collapsing and getting cheaper by the day. But they're earning their revenue in a stable foreign currency, like US dollars. Their profit margins can just explode. And then there's maybe the simplest escape hatch of all, just holding foreign cash. The story from Lebanon is just brutal. You had one nurse who saved all her money in the local currency, in the bank. She lost 98% of her life savings. Her coworker, who did the exact same job but kept her savings in physical US dollars under her mattress, she kept 100% of her purchasing power. Same job, totally different outcomes. Right, so land isn't exactly portable, and carrying around huge stacks of cash can be, well, bulky and dangerous. So the question becomes, how can you concentrate a lot of wealth into something small, something private, something you can carry in your pocket? And this brings us to a really interesting one, Investment-grade gemstones. Now, let's be clear. We are not talking about the stuff you see at the mall. We're talking about natural, untreated stones. Their rarity isn't based on a market trend. It's a fact of geology. The supply is what it is. This gives them incredible wealth density. You can hold a fortune in the palm of your hand. And because their value is verified by independent labs, not by a government or a bank, they become this super portable, super private way to store and move wealth. Okay, so we've talked about preserving your large-scale wealth. But what about just surviving day to day? What happens when the whole financial system just freezes up? Well, that's when the economy goes right back to the basics.
I mean, think about it. The stores are empty, the ATMs are switched off. What do you actually use to trade? Because here's the thing, just because money stops working doesn't mean commerce stops. People still need to eat, they still need things, they just find a different tool to trade with.
And history is super clear on what becomes the new money. In post-World War II Germany, the de facto currency was cigarettes. Seriously, they were easy to carry, they didn't go bad, and pretty much everyone valued them. In any crisis, things like canned food, medicine, soap, that stuff becomes literally worth its weight in gold. And hey, don't forget about skills. If you can fix a car or grow vegetables or patch a roof, that's a service you can trade directly for the things your family needs. Okay, we have to talk about the flip side. This is the crucial warning. If the things we just talked about are the lifeboats, then what we're about to cover are the anchors, the assets that are guaranteed to drag you straight to the bottom. Victim number one is government bonds. And let's just think about this for a second. What is a bond? It's a promise. It's an IOU from the very same government that's destroying the currency. So they're promising to pay you back in money that's becoming worthless. It's like a promise to pay you back in trash. It's a guaranteed way to lose it all. And this one is just the saddest of all. Savings accounts. This is where, as one source so brutally put it, the grandmothers and the careful savers get slaughtered. It's so insidious because the number on your bank statement doesn't change. It looks like your money is safe, but what it can buy just collapses. That example from Lebanon, 1 million lira went from being able to buy a house to being able to buy a single tank of gas. Inflation is a silent thief, and it just erases your savings. So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this is all interesting history, but it's distant. But here's the catch. The exact same warning lights that were flashing red in Germany, in Zimbabwe, and Lebanon, well, a lot of people think they're flashing right now. Let's just start with this number, $35 trillion. That's the approximate U.S. national debt. It's a number so huge our brains can't even really comprehend it. But remember that 5-stage pattern we talked about? Well, this is stage 1, massive debt and deficits. So, since that 35 trillion number is basically impossible to grasp, let's put it in terms that we can understand. This is staggering. Right now, the U.S. government spends more money paying just the interest on its debt than it spends on the entire military. Just let that sink in for a second. More money to service the national credit card than to fund the entire defense of the country. And the historical record is crystal clear. No fiat currency lasts forever. Look at this timeline. Back in 1913, the British pound was the undisputed king of global finance. By the 1950s, Britain was broke and the pound was done as the world's reserve. Then the US dollar took over. But a really critical thing happened in 1971. The dollar was taken off the gold standard. It became a pure fiat currency, backed by nothing but a promise. And today, the dollar's share of global reserves is falling. It really does feel like we're watching history play out all over again. So here's the final kind of brutal takeaway. The average lifespan for a fiat currency throughout history is only 27 years. The current version of the US dollar, unbacked by gold, is over 50 years into that cycle. You could say we're living on borrowed time. The pattern is clear, the autopsy is done, the signs are all there if you're willing to look. So the real question isn't if this pattern repeats itself. The question is when. And the only thing that really matters is, are your lifeboats ready?